Some departures are sudden. Some drift away in silence. But no matter how it happens, when someone leaves, it feels like the air has been ripped from your lungs, like the ground beneath your feet has quietly dissolved. You stand there, trembling, replaying every moment, every laugh, every promise, trying desperately to find the fault, trying to make sense of what cannot be made sense of. And in this overwhelming storm of grief, there is a terrifying loneliness, a belief that your life has somehow fractured irreparably, that the love you gave has evaporated into nothingness. And yet, even as your mind convinces you that you are broken beyond repair, the truth is far more subtle and more radical. The depth of your pain is proof of the depth of your heart. You loved fully. You opened yourself completely. You gave without holding back, and that is not weakness. It is bravery. It is humanity. It is evidence that you are alive in a way that few allow themselves to be. And in the quiet moments, those long nights when the world feels asleep and yet your thoughts are deafening, you may feel the weight of absence pressing down, as though every heartbeat is a reminder that someone who once mattered has vanished. The spaces they once occupied, the routines you shared, the small gestures that once seemed ordinary, now echo with a hollow emptiness. And it is here, in these moments of raw, aching absence, that your heart begins to whisper truths you are only beginning to hear. That grief is not weakness, that longing is not failure, and that surviving heartbreak is a testament to the courage you never realized you carried. You are allowed to feel this fully. You are allowed to sit with the tears, with the heaviness, with the questions that may never have answers. And even in the darkness, there is a flicker, a faint, almost imperceptible awareness that the story is not over, that your heart is not ruined, and that life is waiting to be reclaimed from the fragments of what once was. And perhaps the most confusing part of all is the mind's insistence on explanation, on replay, on reason. You want to understand what went wrong, what you could have done differently, how you might have stopped the departure. You conjure scenarios in your head, rehearsing conversations that will never happen, imagining apologies or confessions that cannot change what has already occurred. And in this endless looping, the heart aches even more, because you realize that closure is not something that will be delivered to you by anyone else. It is something you must find within yourself. The absence, as devastating as it feels, becomes the doorway into your own strength, the first step in reclaiming the space in your life that has always belonged to you, the first breath of freedom you didn't know you were capable of taking. And in this space of unbearable loss, a quiet truth begins to emerge. Their leaving does not diminish your worth. It does not erase your capacity to love, to connect, to feel deeply. You may feel untethered now, but the very act of survival proves that you are capable of resilience beyond what you can currently comprehend. The grief is proof of love, and the heartbreak is proof of courage. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the first stirrings of gratitude start to surface, not for the departure itself, not for the pain, but for the awakening it will eventually bring. For one day, though it feels impossible now, you will understand that the absence they left was not a void but a space where you will learn to stand alone, to honor your own heart, to feel your own strength, and ultimately, to discover that you do not need anyone else to validate your existence. And as you sit with this, if these words echo even faintly in your chest, I want you to know, stay here, breathe. This channel, this space, exists for hearts like yours. Hearts that have been abandoned, hearts that have loved too much, hearts that ache in silence but refuse to let the pain define them. And the very act of witnessing your own grief, of honoring your own heart, is the first step toward reclaiming life on your terms. The nights may be long, and the sorrow may feel endless, but in the way your heart continues to beat, in the way your thoughts continue to turn, in the way your awareness persists even through the storm, you are already beginning to rise. Because beneath every tear, beneath every wave of longing, beneath the unbearable weight of absence, there is a subtle truth waiting to be realized. What was lost does not define you. What was lost will not chain you forever. And even when it feels impossible, even when it seems that the world has taken something irretrievably from you, there is a life waiting, richer and fuller than you imagined, beyond the shadow of their departure. And one day, when you look back with clarity and quiet strength, you will see the wisdom hidden in their leaving. You will see the gifts wrapped in absence, and you will understand, in a way you cannot yet feel, why you will one day thank them for leaving. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, your perspective begins to shift. The emptiness that once felt unbearable begins to reveal something unexpected: clarity. You start to notice the patterns you couldn't see before, the moments when you compromised yourself, the times you silenced your own needs, the subtle ways you allowed your life to orbit someone else's presence instead of your own. And in this recognition, anger may rise, grief may resurface, but underneath it all lies a quiet awareness. Their departure, painful as it was, has given you a gift you could not have accessed otherwise. The absence they left behind is not merely a void. It is a space for reflection, a space for growth, a space where your heart can remember itself without compromise. And the strange irony begins to emerge. The very act that once felt like destruction now feels like liberation, even if you cannot fully articulate it yet. And as you navigate this understanding, you begin to notice a subtle empowerment taking root. You realize that their leaving was not a rejection of you, but a redirection, an unintentional guide showing you what does not align with your life, your values, or your heart. The lessons you are learning are not about them. They are about you. You are learning that survival is possible, that strength can coexist with vulnerability, and that love does not require your self-abandonment to exist. You see now that sometimes the people who leave are clearing a path that allows you to step into yourself fully, to reclaim your energy, to honor your boundaries, and to invest in life in a way that is deliberate rather than reactive. And in this subtle awakening, the first whispers of gratitude begin to stir, like the faint warmth of sunrise on a cold, dark morning. And if these words feel like a quiet recognition of your journey, if they breathe even the smallest relief into your heart, then stay here for a moment. Consider this a space for hearts like yours, hearts that have been fractured, abandoned, or overlooked, yet refuse to be defined by loss. And if you find yourself returning here or lingering on this channel, it is not for obligation. It is for connection, for witnessing, for validation that your grief, your healing, and your courage matter. Allow yourself to sit with the understanding that you do not need anyone else's permission to reclaim your life, your energy, or your peace. And as you do, you may notice the faint beginnings of gratitude, a recognition that their leaving, as painful as it was, has made room for your growth, your clarity, and your alignment with what you truly need. And slowly, as clarity deepens, you begin to understand that every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of questioning has served a purpose. You see now that heartbreak is not an ending, it is a transformation. It forces you to confront your boundaries, your desires, and the ways you have allowed your happiness to be contingent on someone else's presence. And as you face these truths, a sense of empowerment begins to settle in your chest, quiet but undeniable. You are learning to trust your instincts, to honor your own rhythms, and to recognize that self-respect is not arrogance. It is survival, it is wisdom, it is the only way to navigate a world where not everyone will choose to stay. And as this empowerment grows, the shift becomes noticeable in your day-to-day life. You no longer seek validation in the places you once did. Decisions that used to feel heavy or confusing now carry a subtle clarity. Relationships begin to feel lighter, freer, and more aligned because you no longer cling to what cannot be held. And the most remarkable thing is that this liberation comes quietly. It does not shout, it does not demand recognition, it does not announce itself. But you feel it in the ease of your steps, in the steadiness of your breath, in the calm that emerges when you no longer chase or plead for understanding that is not yours to command. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to recognize a profound truth. The pain they caused, the absence they left, and the heartbreak you endured were never just about loss. They were about awakening to yourself. And in this awakening, the first true glimpses of gratitude appear. You see that their leaving was a necessary disruption, a clearing of what no longer served you, an invitation to reclaim your life, and a challenge to step into alignment with your own heart. You begin to thank them silently, not for the hurt, but for the clarity, for the space, and for the lesson that would otherwise have remained unseen. And as you let yourself feel this, you begin to sense the momentum of your healing. Grief no longer feels endless, absence no longer feels like annihilation, and your heart begins to understand that one day, you will not just survive this experience, you will emerge stronger, wiser, and quietly grateful. And eventually, there comes a day, though it may feel distant now, when you look back and realize that the person who left gave you a gift you could not have received any other way. The absence that once felt like devastation now feels like liberation, as though every tear, every sleepless night, and every moment of longing has been shaping a version of you that is stronger, wiser, and more fully yourself than you could have imagined. You see now that their departure was not a judgment on your worth, nor a reflection of your value, but a necessary awakening. It forced you to confront what you tolerated, to face your own boundaries, and to reclaim the life and energy that had been unconsciously surrendered. And as this understanding settles, a quiet, almost imperceptible sense of gratitude rises within you. Not because the pain was easy, not because the loss was fair, but because it catalyzed your growth in ways that presence never could have. And as you carry this understanding forward, you notice subtle transformations in your life. Decisions come with clarity because they are made from alignment rather than fear. Relationships carry a new depth because you no longer settle for half-hearted connection or compromise your values to preserve someone else's comfort. You feel the quiet power of a heart that has endured, healed, and risen. You realize that the strength you once doubted was there all along. It only needed the storm to awaken it. And in this space, your joy is no longer dependent on someone else's presence. It is born of your own alignment, self-respect, and the courageous choice to honor your heart above all else. And perhaps the most profound part of this transformation is the recognition that gratitude is possible, even for someone who caused you heartbreak. You begin to understand that the people who leave are not always enemies of your happiness. They are sometimes unwitting allies, clearing the space you needed to fully reclaim yourself. You feel thankful not for the pain itself, but for the clarity, the lessons, and the freedom that emerged because of it. You feel a quiet reverence for your own resilience, for the courage it took to survive the loss, and for the wisdom you have gained in learning to prioritize your peace above the insistence of others. And in this space, a serenity settles over you, subtle but profound, a recognition that life is unfolding exactly as it should, and that your heart, having survived and grown, is now equipped to move forward with strength, discernment, and love that is conscious and intentional. And in this newfound freedom, you begin to notice how light it feels to move through life without the burden of what no longer serves you. The spaces that once carried tension, longing, or fear now hold possibility, growth, and alignment. You begin to live with intention rather than compulsion, to love with clarity rather than attachment, and to inhabit your life fully, without apology, without fear, and without regret. The pain you endured is no longer a chain. It is the foundation of a self that knows its own worth, respects its own boundaries, and trusts its own instincts. You have emerged from absence not diminished, but elevated, carrying a quiet strength that is yours and yours alone. And finally, in the stillness of this understanding, the cinematic truth of your journey becomes clear. Maybe the pain they caused didn't break you at all. Maybe it built the part of you that finally knows peace. The heart that once ached endlessly now beats with quiet confidence. The mind that spun endlessly in questions now rests in clarity. The life that once felt fragmented now feels whole, aligned, and abundant. You realize that every moment of grief, every pang of longing, and every night of despair was shaping a heart capable of love that is grounded, resilient, and free. And in this realization, you feel the full spectrum of gratitude, not for the person who left, but for what their leaving allowed you to discover. Your strength, your voice, your peace, and your capacity to rise fully into the life you were always meant to inhabit. And as this awareness settles over you, you understand at last that the journey of heartbreak is not about the ones who leave, but about the ones who remain. You steadfast, whole, and profoundly alive. You feel a quiet sense of triumph, not loud or performative, but deep, serene, and unshakable. And in that serenity, you finally see the truth that has been waiting all along. That endings are not annihilation, that absence can be awakening, and that the heart has a capacity to transform even the deepest pain into growth, clarity, and a life fully reclaimed. And so you rise. You rise with dignity, with clarity, with courage. You rise into the light of your own understanding, into the quiet joy of self-respect, and into the profound gratitude of a heart that has survived, learned, and finally remembered its own power. And maybe, just maybe, in the echo of what was lost, you hear the most cinematic truth of all. Maybe the ones who left were never gone in vain. Maybe they built the part of you that finally knows peace.